evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another Pen Connect with Women Authors. We're celebrating this month as Women's Month, and we have invited women authors to talk about their work, how their work is making waves, and how they can influence, the space. Today's session is about showcasing relationships through fiction, and we have a bright panel of speakers here who have authored books that have made their space in the publishing industry here in India. And we are going to talk about how their work is perceived, or how they hope it to be perceived in the future as well, with regards to relationships. So this conversation is going to be moderated by Aradhna Shukla. And before I go ahead and before she introduces all the panelists, I'll just go ahead and speak a little bit about Aradhna. Aradhna is a passionate poet, author, and artist by heart, and she often views the world as reflections in her creative mirror. She's an entrepreneur by profession, but she often muses on life while running through the grind of business. A budding author, she has several powerful stories and poems published in acclaimed anthologies, and she was also a contributing author of our own Penmancy publication, Shattered. Her other poems have also found a space in several published anthologies. We welcome you, Aradhna, and
Thank you,
hope to
Kajal.
have a very, very engaging session with you and our panelists. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kajal. I'm so looking forward to this session. I am extremely proud to be moderating this session with a panel of 4 brilliant Indian women authors. And I can promise that we are headed for some fun-packed conversation as we understand what goes inside in the mind of these writers when they write such memorable characters and leave the readers with books that stay with us long after they have been read. Let me start with welcoming our first author on the panel, and that's Vani Kaushal. Vani is a former business journalist, now an acclaimed international author and a columnist.
Hi.
Hello Vani. Her
Hi.
debut rom-com, The Recession Groom, was released in 2015 and was widely acclaimed across the country. Vani also wrote a non-fiction with her book, Flowers Forever, published in the US. It was a book that celebrates the 4-decade-long artistic career of an award-winning American-Armenian artist. Vani's latest romance novel is out soon. It's called Seconds Later. And in her latest novel, she infuses romance with elements of thrill. Vani has been writing columns for online platforms like Quint, Scroll, and Open Magazine. Vani, we will visit your writing journey very soon, but before that, I would like you to share with us answer to one question. You know, there is some peculiarity about your moderator today is that I don't believe in talking in straight language. So I will be asking you a question which is coded in some poetic words. So you decode the question and you answer it for us. Okay, it's a simple one.
Yes,
okay,
sure.
So I say the question. A sweet smile, almost a gurgling brook. What in your persona made you write a rom-com book?
because this face and the smile hides a lot. There's a lot of I think I'm not as straight as my face or my smile might say. There's a lot hidden inside, a lot of experiences. But I do believe, there's no point of going about life in a very morose sort of way. You could be jovial about it and be a bit, comic about everything that happens. And that's what made me. That's how I look at life, and that's why I gravitated to writing rom-com as well. So it's just so much a part of me which people do not know, and yeah, so probably that's what shows in my writing as well. So yeah,
Perfect.
if I
Perfect.
need to answer your
So
question.
that's yeah. It just perfectly answers, because the first thing that I caught about your persona was your smile. So that's why I asked you, was that the reason why this is coming? But you're saying that there's a lot hidden inside.
There's a lot hidden inside, but I have a very light approach to life. I travel light, and I believe I love to read stuff that is light. So I write
Cool.
light. That's all.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Great having you here, Vani.
Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you.
another brilliant author on our panel today is Dr. Harshali Singh, an author, a poet, an academician, and a passionate painter. Harshali is a trained occupational therapist and is also a member of the Consumer Grievance Redressal Forum. She is a contributing author in several anthologies, and she regularly writes for e-magazines. Her novel, A Window to Her Dreams, and the recently launched The Anatomy of Choice form part of 9 book series comprising the Haveli series. Her poems are a part of a bilingual anthology of poems called She the Shakti. She has won the prestigious Write India Season 2, a short story contest organized by the Times of India. Harshali, before we delve further, I
Hi.
would ask you also a riddle, a coded question, and is the fact that you are a painter and an author both. Please tell us, does your prose full pen often spill some ink, coloring your canvas as connections your mind links?
For sure. That's a lovely way to put it. Thank you so much, Aradhna. I think I'm going to use it in one of my books.
Cool.
Yes, of course. The first book that I wrote, I was painting the cover alongside. It's right there behind me, A Window to Her Dreams. Uh,
Oh,
and,
wow. Okay.
it was so amazing that uh, as I was writing the story, I was also painting. And when the publisher asked me that, okay, now that we finalized, let's think about the cover, and I sent him a picture. I said, this is what I painted, and somehow it's whatever I felt about the main protagonist of the book, that has actually come out in the painting as well. So he was kind enough to use that painting as the cover of the book,
Wow.
and that became like a thing because the second book also had a painting of mine at the back. And so yes, of course, I think creativity, I think, just comes out in any form or manner, whether it is prose or it is long form or it is painting. And I feel creative people, for us, I think, I'm sure you're also a poet, so you know that it's like breathing to us. We can't do without being creative or doing something with our hands and mind. And I think everybody has that spark in us. It's just that it comes out in different ways. So definitely, I think for me, I've been lucky and touch wood that I've been able to kind of regurgitate whatever's been inside me, and it comes out in the form of
Beautiful.
whatever's handy at that time, whether it's a pen or a
Brush.
brush. It kind of
Yeah.
comes out there. Yes.
Very nice. Very nice. I could guess that actually. Okay, now as I promised, we have a truly illustrious panel. Today, another acclaimed author we have with us today is Debeshi Gooptu, a former journalist turned
Hi.
author. She lives and works in Gurgaon. Her book, Gurgaon Diaries, Life, Work and Play in Drona's Village, is based on her long-running blog of the same name, which was published by Rupa Publications in 2018. Her many short stories have been published by Juggernaut Books. Welcome, Debeshi. Debeshi, with you also, I
Thank
have a
you.
quick fact check with you. Okay, the question is, the Netflix movie of the Gurgaon fame, was that thriller an inspiration from a book credited to your name? Basically, I'm
Yes,
trying
well,
to
that's
ask,
a
is
big story.
yeah, okay. No, I want to know, is it actually based on your book?
No, it isn't actually.
Okay,
It was
okay.
a case of the. the person who wrote it did a little bit of scrappy homework. So he wrote an article, basically copy pasting another article which was published when my book was released, and he kind of
Okay.
didn't do his homework well. So he assumed
Hmm.
that it was my book, which was actually good
You
publicity
got
for
you
my
got you
book.
got a lot of
A
publicity.
lot of publicity.
Yes, yes. So I'm not complaining because it worked out well for me in the end. And I did tell them that it wasn't my book, but they didn't take the article down. So I mean the ball's in their court, right?
Great. So, do we have the fourth author online, Kajal? Or should we just proceed? Okay, I think we can proceed. We'll wait for Kamalini to join us. And let's start. Oh yeah, we have Kamalini with us. Hello, Kamalini.
No, I want to know if
Hello, you can hear us.
Hi, I'm not Kamalini, I'm Kamalini, please.
Oh, sorry, very sorry. Actually,
Not a
I wanted
problem.
to ask
My
if,
name
if,
always
if I'm
gets
doing the
pronounced.
pronunciation right. Okay,
Not a
Kamalini.
problem.
Okay. Now, welcome Kamalini to our panel.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, she's a writer, poet, and author. Her latest novel, Naked Beneath the Midnight Sun, is her debut novel. She teaches French when she's not writing and is a classical vocalist. A polyglot, Kamalini plans to open a book cafe and hold writing courses sometime in future. Travelogues, book reviews, and poetry are her favorite genres. Her short stories and articles have been published in magazines such as Parenting and New Woman. So glad to have you here, Kamalini. I
Thank
also
you.
have some specific questions lined for you, but as the other authors have answered a small riddle, I have one for you as well. Um,
Ouch. Okay,
Okay,
go
no,
for it.
it's a very easy one. We often
Okay.
speak to readers. I'm saying we often speak to readers through language of our heart. Tell me, how does your polyglot mind help you talk through your writing art?
Hmm. Well, I sing it out in
Oh,
various languages.
okay.
Bong. I'm a Bengali, so first Bengali because it's a musical language, and all the others that I speak, Spanish, French, whatever comes to me, that's the language of my heart. Does that work
Cool.
as an answer?
It's cool. It's cool. That means you listen to all the voices coming from inside. That's great.
Absolutely,
Great,
absolutely.
great.
Hi
Okay,
everyone.
so
I know
Hello.
I don't know the young
Hi.
girl, but Debeshi and Harshali I do know as writers. Hello there.
Hi.
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 Thailand,
okay,
this is
none.
so it's much later than your time.
Ah,
Okay,
okay.
okay. Okay,
And by
let's
the
get the
way,
ball rolling. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sorry, just
Please
to make it
tell
very
me.
clear, I'm sitting
Yeah.
in my quarantine desk. By the way, it's my last but one day in quarantine.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I hope you're feeling fine, huh?
Oh yes, never had a better
Okay.
time. Blast. Love my own
Great.
company.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So, have you written a book already in your
Yes,
quarantine?
actually, I'm editing my second book, and I've written quarantine diaries, which will go into my newsletter and probably get
Okay.
published in some magazine because it does make for interesting reading, even if I say so myself.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, now let's get the ball rolling. I'm sure our viewers are waiting for some questions related to the topic. Uh, each one of us have used relationships in writing to tell a story. Relationships often are the skeleton on top of which the body or the story is fleshed out. Sometimes visible, often just hidden, but no story can ever be formed without sketching out a relationship, be it between inanimate objects, be it a relationship with one own self, or the regular human to human or human to animal relationship. We cannot agree more about the importance of sketching out a multidimensional, many layered relationship to make the story proceed and also to make it a memorable one. So, the question I would like to throw on the floor today for discussion is, why are some predictable everyday relationships beaten to death in our books, like whether it's husband wife or it's breakup or it's romantic relationship, Is it the familiarity of the subject and the ease of writing it the reason? Or is it the saleability, the acceptability to the reader, or it's just the publisher's appetite? What is the reason why we are having so much of that? And maybe let's discuss later why not something else. So, Debeshi, can we start with your views on this?
I actually don't look at it as predictable, because I've written a whole lot of short stories for Juggernaut, and I basically deal with everyday people, very ordinary people actually. So yes, there are a few stories about husband and wives, but I wouldn't really call them very predictable, because they land in predicaments and how they find their way out of it, and I think. They're also very relatable, so I wouldn't say that they're predictable topics. For me, I find it very interesting to explore the dynamics between different people. I mean, it could be some, like, I've written something about a man who sells magazines on a train, somewhere in West Bengal, and he meets a young woman, and then how that relationship plays out. Or a man who's just lost his wife, so, and he meets somebody at the coffee store. So, some of them are I mean, you could term them as broadly dealing with love, but there are certain stories I've written about husband and wives. Like, I've recently written one. It hasn't come out yet, but for Juggernaut again, about a couple, married couple, who are, now that everybody, I mean, initially when we had lockdown and they were all at home together, how they were actually drifting apart, and the woman was involved with somebody else. But now that she was forced to stay at home with her husband, and she's got a small child, how that plays out. Because I find a lot of these, I don't really look at them as husband wife or girlfriend boyfriend or mothers, but these are like very interesting dynamics that I like to explore. So yes, I haven't actually noticed that there's a lot of it, but possibly these are themes which people like to read about, because I mean, they can relate to it, and they kind of strike a chord, which is probably why a lot of authors attempt these topics. So that is what I would think is the reason, in my view.
Okay, great. I think that quite right, because it's the topics are similar. What I said was the familiarity. It's probably the reader
Right.
takes it as a slice of life, and then if there
Yeah.
is a different angle shown in the same relationship, it strikes. How about you, Vani? You've written about romantic comedy. So why do you think you explored that subject?
I think it's not so much to do with what publishers are looking for as much as what you want to write about as a writer. I think we are still a society where family and all that goes on in a family, husband, wife, and brother, sister, and all those relationships are still very important. And these are things that you've grown up with, not just read about. So for me as a writer, I would probably not be able to do justice to a live-in relationship because I haven't been in one. And I have seen my parents married for so and so number of years, and everybody that you see, and the tussle that goes around. You've been through that yourself, or you've seen other people going through all that stuff. I think that's what brings authenticity into your writing, and I think at the end of the day, that's what matters. But then I think there are writers who are there are many voices that are emerging now, and they're writing about themes that have previously not been written about. So there's a lot of experimentation going on, and maybe other authors can shed light on that. So you don't just find conventional relationships, as you probably want to say that why are just conventional relationships written about, like a husband wife or a couple getting married and all. And so people are definitely stepping out of their comfort zone and exploring, okay, what, if I've seen this, or if I feel particularly strongly about this, what if I write about it, and then you see whether the market takes it or not. So that could be also one approach. But yeah, publishers remain a bit conservative because after all, they are into the business of selling books. And if you write something which the reader cannot connect to, then what's the point of even taking on such a writer? And similarly, you might find that in other markets, like I just happen to, I'm really glued to these web online novels on Chinese, like the Chinese on Chinese websites and all. So they are writing and exploring all sorts of stuff, and I just happened to finish something on boys' love, which is just so beautifully written. And there's a series on Netflix called The Untamed, which is like an adaptation of that. With something similar, I have yet to see in the Indian publishing space. So I think we are stepping out. But yeah, I mean, we write what we feel authentically, like we feel connected to. So yeah, there's less of experimentation, I agree, but it is happening. I can't just, I don't think I'll just put it down to like, okay, कुछ भी नहीं हो रहा है थोड़ा हल्के हो रहा है.
Hmm. So, Kamalini, I want to take your opinion on this. That is it that writers, I do not talk about just the set we are sitting with today, but the overall universal set of writers, at least in India, are we not taking the ownership of the changes that we want to see? Like, because what happens is when we see some things on television over and over again, or we read something in literature a lot of times which is shown as normal or acceptable, the society eventually starts, it starts permeating into the lower level and the various stratas of the society, and it starts getting more and more acceptable. So do you think that the Indian writers are not stepping into taboo subjects and not stepping into untouched stories, and we are kind of not taking the ownership of the changes that we should be doing in the society?
No, I don't agree.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to regional writing, and luckily translations are now available. And there are many books that I read which touch upon taboo subjects and about things that, again, I will agree with Debeshi and I'm sorry, I didn't
Vani,
get Vani.
yes.
That there has to be some sort of familiarity with the subject. At the same time, within that framework, there are things that are slipping in which are not usually discussed. It could be the same man woman relationship, it could be a sibling, but there are things which are now being written about which have not been touched upon earlier. In fact, I think India has really come of age in that sense. And regional writing is so rich and yet so unexplored. I wish people would read more of regional writing and their translations because there is so much in there. It's such a rich world, and there is a lot written about which you don't, in fact, do not read in Indian English writing. And I would plead with
Hmm.
everybody to pick up regional books to see what the well of knowledge and the richness of the tapestry of relationships that are touched upon, things that you would normally not. Maybe Indian writing in English is a little more circumspect about that. However, we are definitely moving ahead. There's no doubt about it. I've read some really, really good books, and I'm afraid I wish I had made a note of some of the very good Indian writing in English also that I have read. Especially, what has arisen is mental disturbance that is being touched upon
Hmm.
repeatedly. People are writing about mental health, putting them into stories. In fact, it's not necessary that you have lived something. I wrote a story about an autistic girl and her relationship with her adopted parents. And that really did well. It moved a lot of people. And I haven't lived that life. I have not lived with an autistic child. But you don't have to have lived it all in order to write, I believe.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm sure the other authors agree.
That's what. That's right. Harshali, what's your opinion about such some taboo subjects, and do you think it's touched enough in our Indian scenario?
Well, I won't have to go too far. My second book discusses a threesome. I haven't
Okay.
had a threesome. And so let me just say and that, you don't need to feel everything to write about it.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you will question a few things that you've heard about or which are spoken about in whispers, and you want to explore them. And that is why authors write about things that they might not have themselves. A serial killer doesn't need to really murder somebody, but they can write, and we all have read brilliant works of a serial killer or stories like that. The second thing that was discussed was that we don't have that many Indian writers who are writing about taboo subjects. I don't think so. Hikmat Chugtai is one of the very, very well known, and her stories are very controversial, have been very controversial. There are many, many authors who have written and people have read. I think it's also what we are pulled towards. Sometimes we are pulled towards things as a reader which are comfortable to read. We are not in the space where we would like to explore things. So I feel there is as a reader for every kind of thing that you write. I don't
Agree.
think we need to limit ourselves as to what someone will read. I mean, for myself, I can say that I write of subjects which I enjoy writing about, because I think that is how I'm the most authentic. Beyond that, it's not in my mind whether a publisher will take it up, if someone will like it. I have to like it first, and then I will think of the rest. If I'm not happy, I can write a commercial book, but if I'm not happy with the depth that I reach with that, I don't think, eventually as an author, I will feel very satisfied, even though I might sell it a lot or it might sell a lot. So I don't know. I think it's the choice we make as authors as to what is more important to us. I think every author should answer that question on their own and then start writing. I feel that's very essential. And, I think. So far as relationships between, the very done to death relationships, as you were talking about, um, every person is very different. So how can relationships be same? How can the description of how you are relating to another person be same? So these topics about a husband wife, about a mother daughter, about a son and a siblings relationship, they are never going to get old, because we as readers, I think, we try to find some relatability to the story that we are reading. So these are part of our lives, so we look for relationships that we can find ourselves in. I think eventually these are the stories that pull us in more often than not. I mean, we want to keep reading about, we read about so much about love, we read poetry on love, we read stories on love, we read all sorts of love. uh, but if we say that, okay, love is done to death, done to death, then we should. So these things, love, hate, relationships, are something that never get old. I think as human beings, we just can't say that we can ever go beyond these, because there's so much a part of our lives that we keep searching for them. I don't think we ever, there is a yearning to find a relatability to a story. And all the books, if you see, which have done really well, are all, as you were just talking about a few minutes back, that all those stories have relationships as their foundation. And so, and hence people read about it more and more, even whether it's fiction or non-fiction. So I feel, I don't think we are we are ever going to
I don't think we'll
not
ever be
want to
done with
read.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Endless
not want
Yeah,
to.
possibilities.
it's a part of us, so it can't be done away
Absolutely.
with. That
Yeah.
has to be there. But
No,
like,
it's going to
if
do,
we,
it's,
yeah.
yeah, sorry, but it's not something that we can say, oh, even in thrillers or any other form of book that you read, relationships form the foundation of every
Yes.
book. Yeah.
No,
So
but
we are
like
safe.
if we go back to history, there were certain things like if you really go back and say that when sati was so practiced, there were writers who were writing against it. So it
Yeah.
was not something which was an acceptable subject at that moment,
Yeah.
but some
Yeah.
writers took the onus on them. Even if
Absolutely.
it got them brickbats, even if it got them punishments, even if it got them jail, they still did it. So
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that we set of writers would do it because it's not our calling. It's okay. It's not our calling, but But do you think, Debeshi, more and more these subjects should be explored? And how about let's talk about unrequited love? Sometimes people want to pick up a story because they are struggling in life and they are looking at, probably a solace or something, and then finally they read unrequited love, and that's where they find their solace in. And how do you think about that aspect of relationship?
I think the most important thing is that we writers are always trying to explore human nature, and the best way that we can um, showcase human nature, because essentially it's pretty much there are certain dynamics which will stay the same throughout. So I think relationships are the best way to demonstrate how human nature plays out in various situations. And as you said, unrequited love, or adultery, infidelity, or some empathy, compassion, all of the, it doesn't necessarily have to be in boxes. So you can explore various shades of all of this through these relationships. And when people read for instance, if you're going through a situation and you come across a book where you find, hey, that strikes a chord, I think the main thing is the reader should be able to relate to what you're writing about. Because sometimes it could be like, I've had people tell me about my stories, because some of them are really about very, they're not exotic, or they're very commonplace things, situations, everyday kind of situations that we find ourselves in. And how do we react to those, those triggers? How do we move forward sometimes? And I found characters have, take, I
A
try
life
not to
of
get
their own.
judgy, because yeah, and if you don't view them through a lens, and a moral lens or any kind of lens, and just let them play out the story, it becomes very interesting. So it's
Very
it's like
authentic.
research of a kind, yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's
very
like
authentic. It
you're
resonates.
you're learning,
You.
yeah, exactly. You're learning about human nature, and these are things that happen. So yeah, unrequited love. I think written a couple of stories where like, for instance, there's one in which there are three students, and they kind of come together after a long time, and they find out that one of them was in love with the other, and again it's a same sex kind of affection. And how that plays out through letters, I personally found that very interesting to write, because these are things that keep, it's like you exploring this while you write, and see, okay, it plays out like that. Often it's like, it's surprising to you as well, because it's how the characters lead the story. So I would say
Yes,
uh,
very
uh,
much
uh,
so.
it's just human nature. That's how we are exploring these relationships and writing about them in our stories.
Yes.
Great. Vani, I wanted to understand while you were writing your books, what exactly is, how do you make a maze of, because there are probably a lot of writers, aspiring writers listening to you people. And so it'll be great if you can give some insight. How do we build multi-layer relationships for a character? How do we fit him? And then do we like make a mind map before going ahead and we work on all the permutation combinations of behavioral outcomes that would happen if we put the character in that situation? How do you go about it?
Okay, so there are two ways to go about it. One, you kind of have a storyboard in front of you where you know exactly how many characters you wish to have, and what sort of nature these characters are going to have. You have pretty much planned out your whole story right in front of you, from front to the from the beginning to the end. You know everything what goes on in each person's life, and you know these characters very well. So that's one way of going about it, and many people do that. I don't work that way. I go, so I have come to I have come to realize that you don't write books. Books write themselves, and you're just a medium. So I'm one of those who's channeling an idea. It just comes to me. The voices start speaking in my head, and they just drive me crazy sometimes, because I have these 10 voices speaking to me, and I have to let them do what they want to do. So sometimes I might handhold them and I would like to push them in a certain direction, and I know that I'm not, they don't want to go that side. So for me, it's more like I look at it as a very spiritual process where I'm just a medium to write, and the book just automatically, the characters, just their voices and their nature, everything just comes through. But as a medium, you have to be pure. You have to not let your ego drive you, because sometimes you could be like, oh, will this click with the reader? And then that's where you lose the flow. You have to stay
Momentum.
in the flow. You have to stay
Yes.
very grounded. And I would like to know, how other authors look at this whole process. But then I would like to say that at least in the big, like when you start out as a newbie writer, that's not how you start, like, because you're very conscious about your writing. And that's why newbies writing will always be different from a master's writing, because a master knows the craft is just, he or she is just a medium. And a newbie would like to please the reader. You have to get out of that pleasing mode and just have to be authentic about the process. So that's how I look at it. And then once you submit yourself to this process, then that's when you realize that the multi-dimensional layers that you're talking about, the relationships, everything is just already done for you. All you have to do is just structure it carefully, just keep working on it, and it will be, you will kind of realize where this whole thing is going. So that's how I look at it. That's how
Very
I
nice.
write my books. Yeah.
Cool. Harshali, even your opinion, because even your books, Window to Her Dream, and it's all about a girl put in a situation. So, and probably she is having multiple relationships with. I'm not talking about romantic relationship, different relationship at different levels with her parents. So, how do you? What is your, like Vani said, she would like to know other authors' opinion about it as well.
Yeah. So my books are one they call the Haveli series, and there
Yeah.
are 7 children, and each character, each sibling basically, and the parents get a book, and so that's how I've planned it in my head. Quite like Vani, I'm also a very organic writer. So I let the characters just begin and start the story, and then. But I have learned on my third book, by
One
my
second.
third book that I'm writing and editing, that a little bit of plotting is essential, because you just can't let them free and because the book is never going to end then. So a little bit of plotting does come very helpful, and in eventually it kind of wraps it all together, because you need an arc for every character. Regarding having having different multiple layered relationships, it's so as a human being, we also are. As a woman, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a daughter-in-law, and I think as a woman it's very easy for us to kind of write multiple relationships because we are living them. So I don't see it as a very big hurdle, so to say. Um, and when I was writing this, the when I started writing the story, it very naturally came to me that you cannot have a singular relationship in your life, because you're a human being. You're a rounded character. I wanted to make her rounded with flaws and with things that she's not very proud of doing, etc. So challenges she's had and everything, and who supports us. It's your family, it's the people who are around you or in your circle. So in my view, I don't think it's very difficult to write so many relationships, because I'm living them myself. And I know so many women, and thankfully all my professions that I've been in, which have been a few, um, I've dealt with a lot of people. There have been so many stories, so it's all played into how eventually the story panned out. And to create that rounded character, you do need multiple layers. You cannot have just a singular thing running through the book. I mean, short story, yes, I can. We've all written short stories with just that one relationship or just that one person's thoughts going on. But I think a long form or a book needs much more to make it complex, and the
True.
conflict has to be real and deeper, so that you can resolve that conflict.
Mm.
and hence that becomes an essential commodity, rather than it becomes mandatory that the protagonist or the person, the character you're writing about, has a lot of things in their life that they have to, either resolve or they have to come to terms with, etc. So yeah, so
Yes.
I enjoy it. I think it makes it more it makes it more interesting and readable. And I don't know whether I'll be able to write a whole book with just one relationship, but you've just given me an idea. I just might try it.
Wow. Okay. Kamalini, since you mentioned about mental health and in current scenario where people are in lockdowns, I think mental health is becoming a huge problem, and relationship with one own self, that is a subject which you are saying that it's increasingly being explored by authors, because we as human, we are supposed to be social human beings, but we actually technically are becoming like turtles, where we just raise our head for digital presence and then we curl inside once again. And so what do you think about literature on these topics, about relationship with oneself, about one's body image, about those subjects?
I think it's coming out more and more, and honestly, as humans, if we don't have healthy relationship with ourselves, we can't have them with anybody else. Honestly, every relationship will be cracked and blistered, and so talking about mental health is becoming increasingly important. A lot of the actors are talking about it, that they go for therapy. People are less, I don't know, about India is still coming of age in that sense. People are still ashamed of saying that they need help, and I think all of us at some point need to talk to somebody who's not within the family or friend circle, because it's so important to get therapy. And the more we talk about it, the easier it'll become for us as a society to accept that we are all needy, that we all have issues, and they cannot be resolved by ourselves or somebody close to us. It's not enough to have buddies who you talk to, they are also, in a way, a part of us. So we need to really, I think, more books should be written. Authors should tackle this issue more and more, about how important it is to go out there and seek help. And I hope people, take this as a cue and write more about it, because relationships can only be sane and healthy if you are with yourself sane and healthy. And having a relationship with oneself, I don't know if people even understand how important it is to be aware and to be less. We have so many delusions about ourselves because we see ourselves through other people's eyes. It's like you said, like turtles. We cover ourselves, mark our presence on the social media, and then back to hiding, because somewhere we are ashamed and we want to show our best face forward.
Yeah.
And that is something that needs to be addressed. And I think people are becoming aware, but it's a very, very slow process as society doesn't allow for it. It's not that open. And it's going to take a while before we can, beat that drum and say, yeah, yeah, sure, I'm happy to, talk to a therapist. People do it, but they do it in hiding. I know that for a
True.
fact.
Mm. Very true. Okay, Debeshi, since you've written about some real life characters in your Gurgaon diaries, and you've taken scenes and slice of life incidences of probably things that have happened with you or with your friends. So, and I believe it's a comical satire as well. So, I just wanted to understand that how important it is to build in a fictional angle to those characters when you are quoting real life, like people know probably who you are speaking with, like indirectly you're speaking with some neighbor, somebody in your neighborhood, let's say. So how important it is to round off the character, tone down the character, so that you don't hurt the sentiments of any particular community or a caste, especially when you're writing stories inspired from real life.
It's very, very important because Gurgaon Diaries initially was a blog that I was writing when I moved to Gurgaon from Calcutta. So a
Yeah.
lot of it is basically so it's like my stories, and yes, I have fictionalized a lot of it. Though that book has gotten me into a lot of trouble, and I've also lost a lot of friends because of it, because somehow they thought I was writing about
Oh
them,
dear.
which I wasn't. It's just that Gurgaon is that kind of a very I love the place. I've been here over 2 decades, but it's also very odd in some respects, so while I tried to touch upon them in a funny vein, when the book was just prior to publication, there were a few things that I had to tone down, because my editors thought that once the book came out, it would probably not be viewed in a good light, because there were some references to, for instance, there was a references to politics. I talked about the cows, which I mean, these are taboo subjects, right? It's
Sensitive
real life
subjects,
here.
yes,
Yes,
for sure.
sensitive,
Yeah,
very
but
sensitive at the moment.
but I had to cloak them in a lot of humor, so that people wouldn't get riled, because it's real life, but then you have to put it in such a way that people don't get offended. So that's when I realized that it's easy to do it when you're writing humor, but then again, you could get into trouble. So you have to be, that's the tricky part. You have to be really careful about how you're putting it across, because now gradually more and more I see people just get offended at the drop of a hat. So writing that book was tricky, because initially I was just writing a blog and it was funny and people would laugh because they could relate to it. But then when it became a book and it was going to come out, then I had to, there were certain things I had to kind of tone down, because the editors felt it would kind of not be taken too well, and I did. So
Understand.
coming back to your question, it's very important, and I think more important when you're writing humor, because you might think it's funny or it's a satire, and you are talking about real life issues, but a lot of people will not be
Would
happy
not.
about it. And there
Yeah.
have, yeah, and
Absolutely not.
there have been incidents which I have written about, which now, honestly, that's another thing, because they're real life incidents, and you know my daughter was involved in some of them, and people keep quizzing us about it, so it has landed me in a lot of trouble. So in hindsight, if you're planning to write humor or talk about real life, you really need to be very
You need
careful
to be
what you're writing,
careful.
because it
Fair
might
warning.
get
Yeah,
you in a suit.
absolutely. I think we've all burnt our fingers there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, I have something interesting for you guys. I'm going to do one rapid fire, which is just a one question, and I want one word answer, which is top of the mind. Just dive inside, fish out for that one word that comes into mind, and I will leave you at that word. You can explore within whether that is what your take is. So let's start with Debeshi. Debeshi, your scenario is mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. What is that one word that comes to your mind? You can't take so long.
Tussle.
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 Okay.
Tussle.
Okay. Harshali, husband and wife
Communication.
relationship.
Oh, sorry. Communication.
Communication. Very
Communication.
good. Okay. Kamalini, female boss and male subordinate relationship.
Uh, Power.
Power. Okay. Vani, two teenage boys relationship. I think you've already read about it.
Love. Because I just happened to read boys love.
Okay. So what's that one word that comes?
Well, one
Quick.
word, it is love. Why
It
not?
is
Come on, let's tell
Love.
love.
She's saying love.
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 Okay.
Okay.
Love.
I
Fine.
just happened to
So
finish a beautiful novel. Just don't mind.
okay, no, it's perfectly okay. That's why I said it has to be instantly. It has to be whatever is in your mind. So now we leave it at that for you for that relationship type. So maybe you explore something on that. And I think we have some viewer questions. Kajal, if you would like to get some viewer questions in. So we have one question from Padmini. She's saying, why is Indian writing so lacking in humor, especially women writers? So much angst, despair. We hardly find zany characters with oddball experiences.
No, I don't think
Hmm.
so. I mean, uh, we have a number of women authors who write really well, and I'm not able to get the name right now. Otherwise, we can always write down the names of the authors in the comment section. And
Yeah, but I don't think it's about writing well. She's talking about despair and angst, which is projected by Indian writing, not just
no,
women, but
lacking in humor. She's saying. She says,
yeah,
why is Indian
I think
writing so
in general,
lacking in
Indian
humor?
writing is lacking in humor.
Especially I think what she's trying to say is that probably, as you said, Harshali, there is so much happening in our own lives, in our own
Yeah.
relationships, that it just influences our writing. So probably that's what she's trying to say, that is this the scenario with Indian women, that they are getting too much inspiration from their own experiences.
I think women are going through a very big flux. And so I think women authors are also writing about that flux, which is very in real time. Because we are in that time when, as a generation, we don't agree with a lot of things our mothers did, and we can't be the complete friend to our daughters. I mean, we are still the mothers, so that line is so thin that women of at least my generation or our generation collectively is really trying to walk that line as best as we can. And so there is angst, there is despair, because you see that you are failing at times and you are not doing so well. And hence I think more women authors are writing about that angst. And because as we were just discussing a few minutes back, that we want to write and discuss and explore things which we are feeling ourselves. So that could be one of the reasons. But there are a couple of very
There
good
are.
authors who are women authors, who are female authors, who are writing very good humor.
Like
uh,
Tina just said, no, Twinkle Khanna, Kiran
Yeah.
Mandral. They write funny stories, and I don't know about Anuja Chauhan. I haven't read her.
Anuja Chauhan, yeah, I was just about, yeah, that name. It didn't. So Anuja Chauhan, all her books are very, very funny, and they're very subtle. So it's not like in your face humor. It's very subtle. It's done very wittily, and
I
she
guess it's
kind
the
of,
percentage. They aren't
yeah,
enough. There just
yeah,
aren't
there
enough
aren't
funny
enough.
books
I
by
think
Indian women. I
what
suppose
I
that's what she's trying to
think is
That's
point
what
out.
she's trying to say.
It's
I
time
think
to write a
she's
funny
just
book,
saying
Harshali.
write more funny things rather than despair and angst.
None of my books will be funny. I can be funny,
Yeah.
but my books are very serious. Unfortunately, no.
Yes.
I think it's. I think for me, as far as I'm concerned, I see we are evolving in that sense, because I can see a lot of stand-up comedians who are now on YouTube and all, who are all women, and they're doing excellent work, and
Yeah.
they are trying to bring in original stuff. And if you've seen that FOMO shots and all these new recent series, you would find
Yeah.
that they are there are people who women specifically who are exploring comedy, and our daddies and nannies always had such a they were always joking about life. I never heard my daddy or my nanny, and you might remember as well, our grandmoms were like funny women. They had something up their sleeve which would just crack you up immediately. So I think, when you put, for me, because I wrote a rom-com, the challenge for me was our humor is in our language, like Hindi or in Punjabi or whatever language you speak.
Well
And
said.
to,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
write that in English is a different ball game
Sometimes
altogether.
it doesn't come
It gets
across. Yeah.
lost in
That's
translation. You
my
Yeah.
cannot get
loss
the
in
same
translation.
impact at
And I
all.
think that's where I think we lose out, because
Yeah.
either you've got to just hit it, or you just miss it. So it's
Yeah.
like that. But we are
Totally
getting
agree.
there.
Like the slang languages, you just can't possibly put them in English.
They don't
Absolutely.
sound the same. I mean, they
They
just
don't
don't
sound
sound
the
the
same.
same.
Yeah.
Language
True.
is important. But yeah, I mean, Vani makes a very valid point. It all gets lost in translation.
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
Ran is saying something. Writing about threesome is really cool. It's something that Indian authors still need to explore. I do have a question. Does this threesome just casual sex in your story, or does it involve the polyamorous lifestyle?
So Anatomy of Choice is about the second daughter of the family. It's a very well, I won't say conservative, but it's a family which is very Indian and very rooted in the traditional Indian way of living. So having a child who who goes out, has a live-in relationship with her boss, and then because her life or their relationship is not doing so well, and the zing as is not there, they try an experiment. And so that is how, so it is treated as an event. The story is
Ah,
actually about the consequence of taking that decision, that are we ready as Indian women to to kind of handle the consequences of such a relationship, of such a decision. We want to project ourselves as very out there, and that we're very. I won't call it modern, because I think that gives a very negative connotation to the word, but taking our decisions on our own. And then what, so the story is not about the three it's the threesome is just the event which leads to the consequences, and how the character deals with those consequences, how she comes back home, and how she finds the support to deal with that, and all the other things that come with it. Are Indian men, because the boss is Indian, are they able to kind of process it? So everybody thinks of a lot, doing a lot of experimentation, and there's so much that is happening around us, and there is so much exposure to all this. But when we actually take that decision and do those things, are we ready as human beings, as adult human beings, to deal with what comes after? The emotional baggage that you deal with when you take a decision. So the main story is about that. But yes, it is it was a question that was really in my mind, as to how would a woman deal with it, how would she be able to handle that kind of um, you know uh, that decision, and how would her partner, who is the one who instigates it,
Okay.
how would he deal with it? So it was more, the idea was very was something I wanted to write about and explore, and
Great.
that's what I did.
Great.
And
Actually, I don't think I can end this discussion without discussing the commercials. So I wanted to understand from you, Debeshi, about the publishing route. You all have walked the publishing road, so and I'm sure you have some insights to share with the aspiring writers in the group. And so, how difficult? How many rejections should anybody expect? How much would be a lot? And how much change does happen in your thought process while you're going through it? Do you go through self introspection? What am I doing? How is the journey?
For me, actually, even though I've been I mean, I started out as a journalist when I was 21. So even though I've written for most of my life, the creative writing journey only happened in 2015. And it happened because the first pitch that I sent out was rejected by all the five biggies. And, I was really depressed. And then this blog writing thing happened. And then, I've done both routes. So I've self-published as well as been traditionally published. So initially, after I got rejected, I took a collection of five stories from Gurgaon Diaries, and I published it on Amazon. And that book did so well that Rupa came to me with a deal for bringing that out in print, which was actually like a dream come true. So I was very lucky. And right about the same time, there was this character, again going back to this humorous thing. One of my first stories about this character called Dragon Auntie, which she was a character from one of my blog posts. And she kind of demanded that I write a novel, and so I sent a pitch to Juggernaut, and they were very happy and they published it. So I think the thing that I've learned is, which I would tell all aspiring authors, is you need to be really really patient, because things don't happen overnight. You don't get book deals overnight. You have to also develop a thick skin, because you will be rejected. I mean, even if you've had two books published by traditional big name authors, the third one might be rejected. So have a thick skin, be very patient. And a lot of people are in a hurry, so they self publish. That option is also there, but you need to decide which route you want to take. But whichever route you take, you need to be really really very patient and develop a thick skin, because being a writer is all about getting, rejected. So you mustn't let that affect you, and you must believe in what you're writing. And I think Harshali had talked about this earlier on, that you want to write something, the subject is very dear to you, you believe in it, and you write it, even if people don't agree with your vision, or you get rejections. You have to keep plodding on, because at the end of the day, it's all about how much you believe in yourself, in what you're putting out, and the
Yeah.
saleability
Can't
of your
agree
book.
more.
I mean, initially people might not
Absolutely.
see it, but you have to keep plodding, and you have to keep writing, and just going on. You can't be a quitter, because this is a very tough long road. So you have to keep going. And for me personally, I started writing books rather late in life, so I feel like there's so much I want to do, but there's not enough time. So I'm like in a big hurry. So I would say it doesn't matter whether you're young or old. If you want to write, just go ahead with it and just keep at it.
I don't think writing has
Correct.
any age attached to it at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Exactly.
And one thing I'll say that going off from Harshali and Debeshi, my book is really dated in the sense it belongs to 1985. But both of them said it, and I will repeat that if you believe in what you're writing, which I believed in this story, the Norwegian saga, I said I don't care if it never gets published. I have to write it. It's inside me. So I believed in it, and
Yeah,
finally it did get picked up by,
exactly.
unfortunately, not an Indian publisher, somebody abroad. So my sales did, because my readership is in India mainly. 85% is in India. So it may have been a folly, but I believed in the story and
Yeah.
I just did it. I had to. I just had to. So absolutely, if you don't love your story, nobody else is going to
Yeah.
like it. Trust me.
Yes, you have to
Exactly.
bring it
Yeah.
out.
And if you're a quitter, you shouldn't be writing in the first place.
It's
If
true,
you're
very
already,
true. You
chhod do.
like Debeshi said, you have to be thick-skinned. Keep on
Yeah.
writing and
Yeah.
keep on feeding the readers will come. It's eventually you have to first
Believe in
start
your
letting your
work.
voice
That's
come out. Okay, great. It's been a brilliant session. All of us have shared some great insights. I'm sure the viewers have really enjoyed this session. Because and Kajal, would you like to join back? And
Yes, thank you so much
hi.
for bringing me back here, and thank you everybody for being here. It was a lovely session. I'm sure whoever could make it. It's such a surprise, and I'm really very delighted that Kiran was here a minute ago, and this is what she had to say about the discussion. And how Tina pointed out that her stories are pretty humorous. So this is what she messaged, and I'm delighted that she could make time as well to just people. Thank you so much, all the panelists. It was lovely to have you here. I'm sure everybody who's aspiring to write in this genre, exploring relationships, will find the value in our discussion. Uh, Much thankful to Aradhna as well for bringing out insightful, questions so that we could engage with the bright minds that we have here on the panel. Thank you ever so much. Until the next time, next
Thank you for
Sunday we
having
meet
us.
for.
Thank you.
Thank
thank
you
you,
so much.
Thank
Kajal.
you
Thank
so
you so
much.
Thank
much.
you.
And
Thank
lovely
you,
meeting
Harshali.
you,
Thank you,
the other
Vani.
authors.
Yes.
Beautifully done. Beautifully moderated. Loved the
Thank you,
pace.
Aradhana.
Thank you. Thank you
And
so
thank you
much
so
for
much, Kajal.
And
everybody
it's
was
nice seeing
so
Debeshi,
yes.
who I keep seeing on Twitter only. So it was lovely to see you alive and
Yes,
kicking, that
same
you're a
here.
real
Yes.
person.
Yeah.
Likewise.
And before the session, this is what Debeshi and I were really, talking about, that in this lockdown, we really, really kind of crave for human interaction where we can really discuss and, share our
Yeah.
thoughts with like-minded people. And this is such a way for us to go ahead and reach out to you all. And until we meet next time, which is next Sunday with a separate panel. This is bye for now from Penmancy, and thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for watching Pen Connect with women authors. Bye bye,
Thank you
Thank
so
everyone.
much.
you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
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 Thank you.